Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 516. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Detective Comics 973, Batman 39, and Wonder Woman number 39. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring this episode is once again DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, I want to shout out longtime friend of the show, Ted Sikora, who did the great movie Hero Tomorrow, and of course the comic book spinning out of it, Apama, the Undiscovered Animal, is going to be releasing Tap Dance Killer number 1. Actress Nikki St. Clair was the sweetest gal in the city until she was cast in the role of a horror show musical as the Tap Dance Killer. Now, unable to shake the role, this 1920s-esque bizarre mobster assassin is out on the streets dealing damage with a theatrical flair that leaves him quite literally slain in the aisles. This first issue also features the first appearance of a knockout new villain. This is available for 30% off, only $2.79 from DCBService.com. This is a brand new miniseries spinning out of Apama, and it's great to see that the Apama franchise is growing, because I've been a big fan of it. Also available this month, if you've never read Apama before, they're releasing Apama as a monthly title. So Apama, the Undiscovered Animal, issue number 1 is going to be released this month. It's the adventures of Ilya. He's a Cleveland ice cream truck driver, goes hiking, stumbles upon the spirit force of the most savage creature mankind has ever known. And this was one that we've talked about previously. We got the collected hardcover edition, but now they're kicking it off into a monthly book that's going to be ongoing, that's remastered with bonus new content. So I'm going to pick it up because they've remastered the whole thing and they're adding new content. For me, this is really exciting because this spun out of a movie, and it was like the comic was what the artist in the movie was drawing, and it became the character that was the inspiration in that film. But now what we're getting is the layer of what if that comic really existed. And the comic has its own depth-filled story. Which came first, the comic or the film? And I love this kind of thing with Apama and Tap Dance Killer. Ted Sikora is going to be coming on the show next episode to talk about both books. So I'm really excited to have Ted come back on the podcast, talk about where Apama's been since we've last talked to him before, and just how you grow out of a film a comic franchise, which is what's happening here, and it's a great opportunity to support a local talent. So please, if you have never tried Apama or Tap Dance Killer, obviously if you're not familiar with the character, this is a great time to jump on both at a really great price point from DCBService.com. Jim, what's going on over at InStockTrades.com?
Well, over at In Stock, we've got some really cool deals of the week, and we have included with that is the new Teen Titans Judas Contract. This is the deluxe hardcover edition of this classic story, 50% off, only $14.39. And also we have in the latest release a trade paper of the Coming of the Supermen. You know, it was a really cool miniseries, 42% off, only $9.85.
With that being said, Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
Our first review this episode is going to be of Wonder Woman number 39. James Robinson is the writer, Emanuela Lupacchino and Carmen Carnero on pencils, Ray McCarthy and Carnero on inks, Romulo Fajardo Jr., I'm butchering, it's Fajardo Jr. on colors, Saidatemofonte on letters, Paul Renaud on cover, Jenny Frison on variant cover, Andrew Marina, assistant editor, Chris Conroy, editor. Wonder Woman, of course, created by William Moulton Marston. And apologies for any horrid name butchery because I'm really loving what this creative team's been doing. I've been a big fan of Wonder Woman since the New 52 relaunch of the series, and I feel like it's a book that's just continued. Greg Rucka came on board, and Nicholas Scott, and they were, and actually the whole creative team was just doing, because we had the present day creative team and the past creative team. Everyone was doing a great job on this book. So when you hear that they were leaving, you get worried. And I didn't know at the time that James Robinson was coming in as a writer. This is one of my favorite writers. So it's, and you wonder, like, how is it going to be, you know, now taking over from that run? I am really, really digging this book. I actually had to binge read it. It's one of those things with my recent surgery. I got behind on a whole bunch of stuff, like leading up to it with health issues and things. I got to binge read a lot of this. And oh my gosh, what a great book this is. The last two storylines have absolutely been phenomenal, with what was going on with Grail and Darkseid, straight up to what's going on right now with Silver Swan and that whole storyline. We're bringing in some past elements of Wonder Woman, but then taking the story further and telling us some new things, putting elements of the mythos back in, and actually playing with some characters that haven't been used in the DC universe in some time. So I've been really digging this, but that's my story on this. Where are you at? I'm a James Robinson junkie, so they've got me on this one.
Yeah, I'm right along with you on this. And, you know, like you, I love Robinson, but I tell you, this art team, you know, and part of the reason before we recorded, I like, you could do the art team, because I knew I'd butcher this, and I did not want to. You know, I wanted it to be done correctly, because this looks absolutely beautiful. I've loved this Swan Song story.
Wait, you shouldn't have had me do it then, because right. I did just as bad a job.
You know, I've been a fan of Wonder Woman now for going on a while now, and it's to the point where she's in my top. This is one of my top books that, you know, I continue to get. You know, it's to the point where, you know, when every time you get another story, like that last story, I'm like, how do you top that? Then you go into this Swan Song story, and I love the build to it in part one, where they're showing the backstory of, you know, Silver Swan, where she was this person that Wonder Woman saved, and that hey, Wonder Woman's my friend, and Wonder Woman's busy. She can't keep coming around. Hey, what's going on with Wonder Woman? Why is it? And I loved just seeing the build of this villain. You know, they took an issue to build a villain, to bring this character to life. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And the whole time, you know, it's like we weren't getting a constant Wonder Woman story where Wonder Woman's in the forefront, but we were getting this other look at the character. You know, and we as readers know exactly what she's busy with. She's doing all this type of stuff. But seeing just this character slowly snap, you know, to create the Silver Swan was like, man, that is a really neat story. You know, just the overall arc of this Swan Song has been so far just fabulous. And
you know who this character is, don't you?
No.
This is the one. Remember the George Perez one? There was the mother and the daughter that befriended Wonder Woman very early on when Wonder Woman came to our world. You know, when she left Themyscira and she came to our world, she was befriended by Julia Capitellis, the older woman. And her daughter, Vanessa. This is the daughter.
I did not realize that.
So that's what I meant about him bringing stuff back into the mythos. They're bringing in a character like Vanessa instead of creating a new character. They're like, let's go back to something that was brought in the Perez one and bring her in. So this is Vanessa. This is that daughter. It's brought in, to your point, and where it is fresh. It's for fans who've been a long-time readers of it, because I read the Perez stuff back when it came out, and we did some of it on the show. But I was a big fan of that whole run. So admittedly, my exposure to the character, compared to the two of us, has been a lot more. So when I saw the name, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're using her. How cool is that for this story? But to your point, it's also fresh for people who are casual readers of that or never read any of that. It's a character that works on both levels. I think that's cool when you do something like that and tell a story. To your point, they took an issue just to develop this character. And it's needed for both longtime readers and new readers because of the fact it tells you what is this character's status quo now. That's where this thing gets really, really cool because you're doing a modern telling of the character and bringing everyone up to speed at the same time. And the way that this world works post Dr. Manhattan, it so fits what's going on here. So you're 100%, I'm geeking out over what you're saying. I didn't mean to cut you off. It was more of as you were talking through, I'm like, I don't think he realizes this is a character that actually has a rich history in the book. And I think that's even cooler that she's so accessible. Like I was geeking out with you that I'm like, he doesn't realize and it just doesn't matter. And that's the cool thing about his geek out right now.
Yeah. So she was from the original Perez run, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Right,
See,
very early on,
limited.
she was introduced.
Yeah, I'm very limited on the original Perez run. Now, I've read some stuff, some for the show, some for not for just for me. So, but I have not nowhere near touched the full Perez run. So I don't know. I don't know where she. Yeah, I don't remember her at all. Did not remember this character at all. So that's kind of cool. I'm glad they're doing this, and I did like this connection. How they told this story, because it wasn't as I said, they took a whole issue to create the character, but it wasn't just the single Wonder Woman snubs or her perceived of Wonder Woman snub. It was more multiple stuff building on it. She was paralyzed, which is traumatic. Her mother dies, which adds to a whole nother thing. The treatment that started to work kind of stopped working because she lost the will to fight. And then on TV, she sees her friend, now has new friends that she's hanging out with. And that was just that final little piece of the thing that, that sent her over the edge. And it was, it's kind of the art of 1,000 cuts. It's one little cut after another, just picking away at her mind, at her character, at her persona, to create this Silver Swan. And I really dig that build up, and I thought this was a cool fight, a fight issue. Sometimes you got story issues that are about a story development. Sometimes you got, some, now the rest of the story thing. Sometimes you got a fight issue. This is a fight issue, and I loved, again, the choreography that they did between what was the story being told, what the visual elements were. This was a really cool, just a really cool issue put together that I'm chomping at the bit for part 3.
Now, in the Perez run, the mother of Vanessa, Julia, was the friend of Wonder Woman's. And not that Vanessa wasn't, but I mean, the big connection was Julia befriended Wonder Woman first. Vanessa, so you've actually read, believe it or not, and to your point, it was limited. You read some issues where Julia and Vanessa were present. It's so long ago for you now because of how long we've been doing this show, and you didn't read the rest of the run, that you wouldn't have the attachment that I do to the characters. But the thing is, what this shows and what I really loved about the storyline, what happens if Vanessa goes through this horrible tragedy and Julia dies? She had this connection to Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman was like her shining beacon, and now Wonder Woman is devoting her time to others. In a superhero's lifestyle, in this vigilante lifestyle, however you want to term Wonder Woman, because it's hard to label her just as she is a vigilante, but she's so many other roles too, in ambassador and things like that, coming from where she comes from, that time is an issue. She has a connection to Vanessa, and Vanessa does feel special by Wonder Woman's attention and the fact that Wonder Woman kept visiting her and things like that. But Wonder Woman at some point needs to move on because there's other people to save, other people to focus on. And it shows how that attention is viewed differently by Vanessa than necessarily Wonder Woman. The care was genuine. The concern was genuine. But Wonder Woman got to a point where she's okay, and I have to, because of my responsibility, take care of all these other people and move on to those pieces. Not realizing that in the wake of that, Vanessa would feel abandoned. Then her mother passing away adds to that sense of abandonment. And there's nobody to screw her head on and say, look, even though she's been told that, hey, it's Wonder Woman and she's busy and she's got all that, she's adopted this new family. They've become her friends now. As Wonder Woman's doing what she does, she's helping set that family back on their path with the intention of, I've got you in a good place, now I need to move on to save somebody else. That's really the goal, and there's something noble in that. She's like one of those house refurbishers on TV, like she comes in, fixes up the house, hey, family, and then goes on her way. Yeah. Which, there's a point to that, as far as they aren't her family. She's just doing this noble act of not just saving them from a villain or from a tragedy, but trying to make their life better moving forward. And I think it is a unique thing of Wonder Woman's. We see a lot of superheroes that save people and then walk away. I like when they tell Wonder Woman stories but she does a little more. There is that sense of hope, that sense of compassion that she has, and she tends to do something to take that extra step. We do see it with Superman sometimes where he does these acts, and The Flash, where they do these acts using their powers of rebuilding things or things like that, but you don't see the relationship developed with people like you do sometimes in Wonder Woman stories. And I'm glad that they're using that as a focal point here, because I think what Robinson's doing in this arc is doing a great job of separating Wonder Woman from the other heroes, saying, well, but there's something more to her. We talk about this great compassion of hers. What does that mean? How does that affect how she operates? And we're seeing it here framed up in this great storyline, and how it can lead to and breed jealousy from somebody who thought they were making a deeper connection than they actually were. And I like that part of this because it all makes sense. And you can see the psychological piece of it and how it would work out. And then when she kills the family, and that's really where we're starting off of in this issue, it's how do you come back from that? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where she can get help. And certainly Wonder Woman, if there's somebody who's forgiving and will help her get help, it's Wonder Woman. But Vanessa's completely come unhinged. And I love the wings. I love the fact that they've modernized Silver Swan, but gone to a villain, a classic villain of Wonder Woman's like Silver Swan, and brought it modern age. The way that they're doing this is just really phenomenal, because this comes from her dream of being. I like this storyline of this was her dream of being Wonder Woman's friend. She and Wonder Woman would fight crime together, and they would be a team, and she'd be the sidekick, and, they would, have these adventures together. And she crafted this so strongly in her mind that it becomes kind of the focal point of her obsession and revenge. And it's very cool.
And it's one of the things I loved about this was because for a while I've been always thinking, why can't they take some of this tech they have and use it to help regular everyday people? And I was specifically saying someone who is paralyzed or someone who lost a limb, like you look at the cyborg technology, which is what they did with her. They took the cyborg nanite technology to try to help her walk again. And I always think, why can't they do that? You think how many vets, how many police, how many just innocent people who are caught in a crossfire, or caught in a fire or something, children who have lost limbs, why can't they use this super tech they have to help them? This kind of gives us an answer why you can't do it. Because if she had, kept the sweet and wonderful Wonder Woman and Silver Swan partners, maybe she would have grown those feathery wings that we see in the one, in her drawings. But instead, she turned dark, and we've got these steel razor blades and armor and massive talons for fingers. And we're seeing what happens if you put this superhuman tech in somebody's hands, and they didn't give her the blasters, they didn't give her any of the really cool stuff. It was just the simple nanites that would have helped her reforge her her spine so she could walk again. And she took that tech and turned it into a Grim Reaper death machine. And I like the fact that we do get to see the answer to that question. And I like how throughout, as I said, this is a great fight sequence in that you can see early on Swan is doing some pretty good damage, but it's also because Diana's holding back because this is her friend. She's trying to reach her. She's trying to, understand what's going on. She's not just going, okay, you attack me, I kill you, done. She's, so she, in the process of defending herself and holding back and not doing it, she's taking some damage. And I love seeing that, how they did depict, you can really see Diana's doing a lot more blocking, a lot more evading, not a lot of, striking, because she's trying not to hurt her. Mm-hmm. I thought that was another cool part of this story, especially right in this beginning sequence. Wonder Woman just saw she slaughtered these innocent people, but she's still Wonder Woman. She's not just going to go, okay, kill you, dead, done. She's going to try to reach this person.
I do want to I'm loving this fight, too, for the same reason you're saying. I do want to clarify that Vanessa was Silver Swan in Perez's run, too. There are some elements pulled from that story into this. And I'm really a fan when writers do this. They look back to what worked in the past, and they say, well, we want to bring this in, and rather than create a brand new Silver Swan, we haven't done anything with Vanessa in this run, not to this level. So at all, actually. So why not bring her in? And let's go to that storyline. And taking the mother out of the equation has given a lot of reason for this to be a far more vicious Silver Swan than before. The storyline she was, in the past, she was messed around with characters like Dr. Psycho, and that was what led to Silver Swan becoming an adversary instead of a friend. Because there was the original relationship between Wonder Woman and Vanessa there was a jealousy that Mom was spending so much time with Wonder Woman, and then they eventually became friends. This all predates her becoming Silver Swan. But that dream then, when they became friends, of being Wonder Woman's partner, with Wonder Woman and Silver Swan was something that was present in the Perez run, too. I love that they went back to the mythos and they said, this is actually the third Silver Swan in DC's history. I'm glad they brought this one back and went under this route with it. Because the loss of a parent who may have been a moral guiding figure has, I think, taken this sense of loneliness, made it a part of this Silver Swan, and added to the vicious nature of her jealousy that she had before. So this isn't drastically out of character for what happened to Vanessa before. It's an interesting sort of story because I'm a big fan of Vanessa as a character. I'm a big fan of Julia as a character. And I'm talking about as good guy characters. So when you're taking a character like this vicious, you gotta make me believe as a fan that this is possible and that it makes sense. And it does in this storyline. And it honors the past in a way that I think is very rewarding for fans that have read that, are really understanding what's going on in the larger DC universe right now and saying, okay, it's a chain of events. And because these events have happened now in this modern timeline, that's what's done this to Vanessa. Is there a redemption for her in this? I don't know. I hope so, because I love the character. Yet this storyline is just gripping. You're spot on in your analysis of this, in how this is a very well-developed storyline in a short period of time. Because I think, taking the right amount of screen time for Vanessa is pretty critical to this. Because if you don't care about the villain at all, it's just another, red shirt. I mean, really, for any other purpose. This is Thug Number A. This isn't. This is the Silver Swan. And the Silver Swan matters in this storyline because of how well this issue's developed. This storyline, I should say, is developed. In just a couple of issues. This really is there hasn't been many issues devoted to this, but the right amount of screen time has been devoted. It's one of the things I love about James Robinson's writing. James Robinson has always, when I refer to the Starman run, and I always will, as being one of my all-time favorite comic book runs. And it's one of the reasons why I just grab it, and Firearm, actually, from Malibu that he did. That's stuff where I really got to know him as a writer. And Leave It to Chance. If anybody out here hasn't sought that baby out, that's a great story that I think a lot of people missed. It was an Image published book. It was creator-owned, I believe, by James Robinson. Leave It to Chance. That was just there was a great era for James Robinson writing. Laid a foundation work of this just being a writer. When his name's on something, yep, let's go. So when this run, the first issue kicked off, I was super excited about it. I got a little behind, not because of anything other than the fact that life got in the way. So I was excited to go back and binge watch this. I've actually binge watched it twice, just because, and when I say binge watched it twice, I mean the whole James Robinson run, not just the few issues that we're going to be doing for this show. I did it out of just pure enjoyment. I really am enjoying what he's doing with these characters. I do like that he did not drop what came before. I like that any changes to Wonder Woman, the evolution to Wonder Woman, is organic. And I'm a huge fan of that when a writer comes in and says, well, I'm not going to deliberately fly in the face of what came before. I'm going to organically continue to move this character forward, her support cast forward. The stuff that's going on with Steve Trevor and different characters like that, all of that stuff is organically moving forward in this. And I think it's really important to this series to be doing that, because you want it to be one of the books that, like, you and I love is Green Arrow. One of the criticisms I've had with it since the New 52 began, and it's the only criticism, really, I've liked every creative team that's touched that book. The problem's been, there's been some jarring changes to that book that I felt like, wow, we really started a new run and almost a completely different take on the character. I liked all of them. I just would have preferred the transitions to be a little more organic, so I felt like it was the same story going on. This Wonder Woman, in a way that it's really surprising, they've managed to organically along the way make you feel this was the same one that happened in the New 52 from the beginning. And they've done it through some clever storytelling in the way that it's adapted and evolved along the way. And I like that about this book, because like you, I'm with you. This is one of my favorite books. And Wonder Woman's just an amazing character. And somebody in my childhood, I didn't read a lot of Wonder Woman in my childhood. It wasn't until high school. When George Perez came on, George Perez was a big enough name, because George Perez is huge. I knew his artwork and loved his artwork. When I found out he was taking over Wonder Woman, I started with that series from ground zero and started reading it. And that was the first time I read Wonder Woman from anything other than runs that I got from flea markets as a kid. So it was nice to be able to, and obviously in team-up books and Justice League, I always read Wonder Woman, but not her own solo series. And I read that run all the way through and loved every single minute of it. And Wonder Woman's just a great character. It's just a really fun character that I think we're getting between the movies and what's going on with her now. I kind of wish that TV series had kicked off too. Amazon or whatever. Wasn't it going to be called Amazon, I think?
Yeah. Well, there was a couple different TV shows they were talking about. The one Wonder Woman one, I don't know. It got killed even before they filmed anything for it. And, and then they were going to do more of the Amazon story, and then they said no. And Wonder Woman's this character that I think if people give her a chance, and if she's got the right creative team behind her, she's an amazing character.
Yes, she is.
And I've admitted multiple times on this show, I never read her until we started doing this show. And the reason, when I was young and stupid was, that's a girl comic. I'm not going to read that. And I admit that was stupid, but I was young and stupid when I said it. And then when I was in college, I had, just my limited budget, so I didn't pull her into the fold. And, it wasn't until we started doing the show, like, man, this character's awesome. Oh my God, what the heck was I missing? And so now I'm 100% in on Wonder Woman. Thought the movie again. Her movie portrayal is fabulous. I wish they'd pull her into the TV universe because, again, she's a character who would transfer well into the television universe just because you've got these Diana moments and you've got these Wonder Woman moments. And those are the best characters, I think, that make for good TV because that way the actor or actress is not in costume all the time. They're allowed to be more of a person. More to be, a real person and have real interactions, which make for cool TV shows. And the next thing you know, okay, time to throw down. It's kind of like some of the neat stuff I like with Supergirl, where you have that duality in the character, the duality in the nature. That always adds to, I think, a cool show. But we're getting off on a tangent here.
No, not really, though. You're talking about what you like about Wonder Woman and you're using comparisons, and I actually am nodding in agreement with you. I think it's the duality of the character and the depth of the character, I think, is something that, a lot of my exposure to Wonder Woman as a kid was at Super Friends, and I always liked her on Super Friends. I never disliked the character. I loved the Linda Carter show, for example. I grew up as a kid loving that, and that ran for 3 seasons and really enjoyed every minute of it. So it's been a character that's had a place in my childhood, but I didn't read a lot of her in comics, which is funny considering the fact that I was, as a kid, such a big fan of the Linda Carter show. Because when we were kids growing up, live-action superhero shows were few and far between. You didn't get many of them. We had Shazam in the morning on Saturdays, reruns of Batman 66. We had this Wonder Woman show. Actually, I'm naming a lot. But the Batman 66 was really reruns, so that wasn't new material. Shazam was a Saturday morning show that really was geared towards, in its run, kids. The primetime live action geared for everybody. And that's pretty critical there, because that's what you're looking at with Arrow and the Flash and things like that, was really Wonder Woman, and there was that live action Spider-Man. I don't think I'm missing anything there. Those were our 2 television shows that we were given, I think, during our childhood. Did you watch that live-action Spider-Man at all?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, well, but see, here's the thing. Did you feel that way as a kid, though? I agree with you, because I've watched it I've watched it currently. And there was a couple Captain America movies. I take it back. There was a couple live-action Captain America movies. As a kid, I liked all of that stuff. I've seen all of it present day. Wonder Woman, the live-action Spider-Man, the Captain America. We had the Hulk, too. But I take it back. We had more than I thought. I'm like, as I'm sitting there, I'm like, boy, they really did.
Oh, yeah, we had this, we had that.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, out of all those, actually going back now because I'm rattling it off, I'm like, the 2 that hold up, it's funny, 2 don't. That live-action Spider-Man does not hold up. And I loved it as a kid, because it was Spidey. Aside from his Electric Company appearances, that was our chance to see Spider-Man clinging to the walls. There really was a lot more live-action superhero than I'm thinking. I'm glad we're talking about this.
Leper Woman and Dinah Girl.
True, on the Cross Super Power Hour. And those were actually created just for television. They weren't comic book characters. Yeah, you're right. So a lot more, I guess, than I'm thinking. It was good stuff. As a kid, so let's go back to that, though, because seriously, the Spider-Man thing, because you groaned at it. As a kid, when you watched, did you not like it?
I'm trying to remember. I honestly don't remember how I felt as a kid, to be honest, when that was on.
That says something, though, don't you think?
That says right there that I wasn't too gung-ho hardcore into it.
Right.
And my brother Bill is the Spider-Man fan. So I know he wasn't, it wasn't like because we had one TV. So you had to, when I was a kid, we just had the one TV. So if you're going to watch something, that it's on that channel. And he didn't fight to have the Spider-Man show on. So that right there is I think a statement as to how our family felt about the live action Spider-Man.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought but I was a kid, and that's not saying that anything other than the fact that I do remember really enjoying it as a kid. It is one of those things that's one I wish I hadn't rewatched because my memories of it were far better. That one didn't hold up for me very well. The live-action Captain Americas didn't either, and I liked those a lot as a kid. I remember him with his motorcycle and the shield, and I remember really enjoying that as a kid. You know what holds up for me, though, and I still watch reruns of it to this day? The Hulk held up real well, and so did Wonder Woman. Both of those I really enjoy, especially the first season of Wonder Woman. I really enjoyed the war sequences. World War II with Wonder Woman, I thought was really well done. So it's a character who I think really translated well to TV in that era. And they really did a great job of using her powers and not making it was funny. It had humor to it, but they didn't go too far to the point where she was never diminished. She was never silly. There was some silliness going on around her, but she never was and carried herself really well and always felt strong. And you felt like she was the heroine saving the day, especially the World War II stuff. The World War II stuff I thought was great. I really enjoyed that. And how they found a way to make Lyle Wagner Steve Trevor again in modern day. They made that work
made perfect sense. Come on.
But it was a good show. And I really found, for 3 seasons, I really enjoyed that. And it still holds up, at least in my opinion.
I agree on that statement. Wonder Woman holds up, and it was a good show. And it is funny because that was one of the shows that we made. One of the superhero shows we made sure we watched every week, and that was I think by season 3, it started losing its magic, and I think the network started moving it around. Once they start doing that, that kills the show. But I still have fond memories, and every time I've ever rewatched it, I'm like, oh, I still enjoy it. I still, I'm like, man, this is cool, and I still want Linda Carter to be somehow associated with the Wonder Woman universe. I was hoping she would be Hippolyta, when the movies came out, because I thought she would just do a great job with it, just because of, just the nostalgia, and just I thought she did such a great job with bringing the persona to life. But that is what it is, and I'm not complaining about anything.
I love what they've done with her on TV. Having her as the president and those type of. I really have liked that part with her. I'm actually trying. I was going to say something else. I'm going to catch myself, just because I don't know where people are at watching the show. Other than the fact that Linda Carter's the president, and I'll leave it at that, which is a sort of a spoiler, but it's a mild one. This Vanessa storyline, as I'm looking back at it, though, the artwork. I'm so glad you mentioned the artwork, because obviously, this is one of my favorite writers. So seeing him write this character and really do such a bang up job is, me geeking out. But when you have a marriage of a really strong art team with strong writing, you get moments like this. I'm just, listen to me sing. And I just love, there's a beauty to the violence in that piece. And I keep forgetting, I'm like, besides this, we've got this big Darkseid storyline that's going on, because Darkseid's been restored. And we haven't really talked about that at all. Darkseid, you start off as this little kid, and the Grail storyline in Wonder Woman that's been taking place here, we saw the restoration of Darkseid, who really is letting everybody else, he could have taken his battle to Wonder Woman further. Darkseid's always about his machinations and his plans, and his plan is taking precedent over this. They're in the Amazon jungle right now. They're looking for these artifacts for the purpose of really claiming power, because he doesn't, it is a very smart move. He doesn't know who he can trust in Apocalypse right now. He knows that the changing of the guard has happened multiple times since he's gone over in Apocalypse. He wants to reclaim Apocalypse, but when he reclaims Apocalypse, it's going to be you either are going to show your loyalty to me or your loyalty is going to be demanded in a dark side way, because dark side rules. And I'm really loving the portrayal of dark side in this, because you talk about villain development. The Grail storyline into this has really left us with a villain who is strongly developed. And I find this a very interesting, I don't want to say take on Darkseid, a very interesting re-explanation of Darkseid. It's, again, taken everything that's happened since the New 52 and before with Darkseid, brought it to the present in this storyline, and left us with a Darkseid that is very well defined, that is very easily identifiable by everyone who's been a fan of Darkseid for years, but also, again, to your point, new readers. If this Wonder Woman story arc is your first exposure to Darkseid, you know who this character is by now. and very well done. I love Grail. Grail, I think, is a character that's been interesting since day one of her introduction, as being she's not just a lackey. There is something dynamic and interesting about her that I find fun because of her duality of her origin. And I really love the fact that, she works in Wonder Woman's world. She works in Darkseid's world. She works on a lot of different levels. We got new gods versus old gods. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the battle with Zeus, which was terrific, because you saw where that was going potentially. Because Wonder Woman's got to be Wonder Woman and save civilians and things like that. But at the same time, Zeus could have used her help. And she did the right thing. But that's sometimes the danger of, you have a moral code that you've got to stick to. And there's civilians that are victims of the battles of the gods and the battles of the heroes and villains. And you have to protect the innocent, which is what Diana always does. And she did in this case, but in that situation, that was how Darkseid was able to overtake Zeus and get fully restored. And I loved that story and what was happening there.
It's the great weakness that the heroes have, in that they have to protect the innocent life. And I do say weakness not as a negative thing, but it is the one exploitation point that any villain can do. And we've seen it multiple times. The really, really cool villains, the ones who have a good layer of strategery down, know that in the middle of the fight, if I need to give myself a breather, all I got to do is knock this building down. They'll rush to save those innocents. Or if I need to escape, I can do this. Or if I need to drain Zeus of his life energy, this is all I need to do. And I liked seeing that in the story. One, because it does fit Darkseid, that he would, use these different weaknesses. He would use anything he needs to actually win. But the best part for me on that whole fight sequence was after he drains him, after he's ready to fight, when the Justice League starts showing up, he's like, okay, I'm going to leave. I don't need to fight you guys. I'm going to fight you when I want to fight you. And I love that. It's just like a classic heel move where I'm like, no. We're not going to fight now because you're ready. We're going to fight when you're not ready and I am. See ya. And he left. And you don't lose any heat. You don't lose any of your power. You don't lose any of the mystique that is how dangerous Darkseid is by doing that. And if anything, it builds the character up to another level where he's not just power, he's also intelligence. And that is something I've loved seeing, the rebirth of Darkseid throughout this, and that we're seeing that he's not just this monster who is destructive force and who is the evil and enjoys the suffering of others and yada yada yada. There's an intelligence to him, and I love seeing him partner up with Grail because it is showing as well that there is something more to Darkseid. Now, you got to have the villain who isn't just evil, maniacal, twisting their mustache, wanting to blow up the world. They've got to have something that makes you say, okay, this is somebody who could actually take over the world very easily. How are the heroes going to step up to beat him?
The female Furies being introduced. It's one of the things I really like about multi-layered writing. You could have really just carried this issue with a Silver Swan story in and of itself. The problem with that, and it's serialized medium. So if you're not building in the background a reason to look forward to future issues, it's where you're doing your fans a disservice. And I think your better writers over time are really good at developing an interesting story behind the scenes that makes you go, I want to know what's going on there. What is Darkseid doing? What is he up to? And we didn't drop any of that. We're giving you these reminders that are not only reminding you where he's at and what he's up to, but adding to it. The female Furies are now going to become a problem for Wonder Woman. I want to see that, because now you've got a numbers game going on. And that's why does Wonder Woman need a team of people, but why is there also a danger? Because a lot of the people she associates herself with are humans. So you've got humans that she's associating herself with who get involved in those battles, and they're in danger. Yes, they save and help her, but she's got to save and help them. And there's always this sense of danger surrounding them. And I really love that you care more for, like, your Etta Candys and your Steve Trevors and people like that, and Steve's squad, because you see them going up against threats that normal humans should not be facing. Gods and super powerful villains and things like that, that I really find it adds that layer. And that whole battle in Istanbul, Turkey, with the female Furies and Steve Trevor's team it's just a great kickoff. And I want to see more of that just as much as I want to see the continued battle with Silver Swan. A character we haven't really talked about, Jim, is Jason.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Jason? We've introduced now a brother for Wonder Woman. Again, father of, the twin brother, actually, because there was Wonder Woman and Jason were born at the same time. What do you think of the character?
He was one of those characters when they first introduced, like, oh, this is awesome, the brother of Wonder Woman, yeah. And then they initially show him, like, yeah, this could be cool. Then when he does his turn, he did his initial turn, I was like, oh, man, I didn't want to turn. But, again, he turns on Wonder Woman, does a second turn back to help her, and he's now living in her house. And she opened up her house to him. Even though he did double cross her, and he did, in a way is kind of responsible for their father's death. There's he's gonna have some elements to, of the guilt to deal with it. Wonder Woman took him in. I was like, I like the fact that she took him in and she's accepting this, and she's still trying to work with him. She's still trying to help him. She's understanding and accepting. But it was neat seeing how he trashed the house for the party because, hey, I understand. And then he's now repairing and he's grumbling. And this character was just so awesome. I'm like, man, I'm going through a roller coaster with him. I want to see, Diana turn him into a hero or turn him into a productive member of society. I want to see this guy go on because I think it'd be neat for Wonder Woman to have a brother. I think the concept of her having a brother, I think would be a neat concept to go with and to explore and to flesh out. Unfortunately, by the end of this issue, I don't know if she still does. But he's been a character. I've loved this roller coaster ride with him where you introduce him like, yeah, oh, boo, yay, boo. You're going back and forth on the emotional roller coaster. And again, if he survives this issue, I hope he stays around. I hope we get more of this. I'd rather see him as Wonder Woman's brother than as a hero. I'd rather see the Diana dealing with Jason as opposed to Wonder Woman dealing with whatever name he's going to call himself. I think that is the more interesting story, the behind the scenes, the interaction. Her, who's not completely comfortable with our society, teaching him about our society because, yes, he's lived a long time among humans, but he's never really had that strong interaction. He's still learning the ropes. He's still learning customs and traditions and whatnot.
Well, he actually understands our world more than she does, but he's too much involved in like pop culture and those. Here's the thing. He's been sheltered and isolated in some ways. In other ways, he rebelled against that and did what you... He's that child that grew up isolated and sheltered from everything, right? To protect him. But then he rebels. And when he rebels, that was when his father left. So then all of a sudden, he's got free reign on the world. He's having parties and, doing all those things. So he's really the lost soul who hasn't found his identity yet. Like, Jason doesn't know who Jason is. Like, who does Jason want to be? Both... if he does go the superhero role, let's go on the if on that part. Because I don't know after this issue that he's going to want to. Maybe he will still. But I like actually that every step that Jason takes, he didn't have the Amazon background, as far as being raised the way that Wonder Woman is, even though he's from that heritage. I mean, that's where he was born. He does not have any connection to that, doesn't know his mother, doesn't know the code in the way that they were. Diana, the reason why she often feels so alien is because she was raised in a very different culture. And she can bring elements of that culture to him in a way that he's been maybe exposed too much to our world, but not taught about it, in a way where he doesn't have a moral center. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's a great example. Actually, he and Vanessa have a lot in common, in the sense that Vanessa feels like she was abandoned. Jason feels like he was abandoned. And I get it, because it's like, why didn't Mom ever come to visit me? And we know why, as readers. She couldn't. To this point, Diana thinks she's gone back and visited her and now realizes that she never has. So, and in that end, Mom is not able to be a part of this world, not able to be connected to it. I do want to see the story, though, where they both. So I don't want him to. I'm with you. I don't want Jason's like not expendable to me. He's essential, and I don't know that I'm as set as you are in that he can't become a superhero. Although I don't really want this to become Wonder Woman and her sidekick Jason.
Yeah.
I'm all for the exploration of Jason trying to find his role in this world. Maybe he does do some superheroics and all that, and is a side character in it. I say all that, and I'm intrigued by him. So I'm very content to follow his journey and excited about it. Because when he gets slashed in the neck, I'm like, no, you can't. You can't now. Not now. There's too much to do with him. Like, I do want to see him meeting Hippolyta. And I want to see what that looks like. I don't want it now. I want to build to that over time and get to see what that looks like. The ending of this issue, talk about a cliffhanger. You see Wonder Woman falling to the ground, Silver Swan, Jason, and Jason clutching his neck. I do not take that to be Jason's demise.
Yeah.
I'm hoping not, at least. There's a storytelling reason to do it, and I get it. I don't want to see that because I think the character is very interesting. I think there's a lot of paths available for him that I think the answer as far as what's Jason's role going to be has not yet been defined. And I like going on that journey with him. So I'm enjoying it. He's a character that's grown on me over time, I think, for a lot of the reasons you stated. He was a good guy, then he was a bad guy, then he was a good guy again, and all for reasons that were understandable and well-defined in the story. So I think that's been the part of it where he's remained an accessible character, and in many ways is more human than most characters that you read about, because of the fact that we've seen him be fatally flawed at times, like we all would be. So it's a good story. I'm really digging this right now. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. One of the things I digged about, because I'm hoping he's not dead, because he could very easily live this. He's the son of he's a half god, and it's not even, it's a god and an Amazon, or his bloodline. So he's tough enough. He could survive the sliced throat, and maybe that'll that'll change him, and maybe he won't be able to talk. Maybe he'll be a mute from now on. That'll really, kind of be an interesting story to tell. But the one thing I loved about that fight sequence where he got, sliced up, he shows up and he's releasing this new kind of power that we've never seen with the storm and this and that, and it's pretty nasty. And then you get to the point where Silver Swan protected herself throughout that whole storm by using her wings to encase herself. Once again, we got an intelligent villain. Yeah. I was like, this is awesome.
Yes.
That for me, again, was one of those great moments, because when it started clearing, you see her sitting like, oh, that is cool. Then you go next page. Oh, she just slit his throat. Wow. And right after that, that's when Wonder Woman opens up. Right there, cuts off the one wing. I was like, man, this is cool. It was that moment where the whole time she's trying to, protect and defend and try to bring her back. That one moment right there is like, okay, I can't hold back now. Now you want to fight an Amazon? Here you go. And that for me was just the great pages. 1 showed cool villains, 2 showed a really cool Wonder Woman, and 3 leaves you with a great cliffhanger going, how is this going to end? Is he going to live? Is she going to live? Is anybody going to die, or are we going to get across the board life? I don't know. I think that's the cool thing, where We're going into that's what I said, I'm chomping at the bit for, the swan song, the final part of the story. I want to see what happens to these three people right here and now. So excited for it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. It's I think everybody involved is somebody I'm interested in. And that's important, I think, in a book. And I think it's where your top-tier writers are very good at this. And it makes me a fan of writers when they have each one has their own unique style, their own way of doing it. And I think that style change is something I really appreciate. When you get to see, okay, this writer does it this way. And I really like when they have a toolbox that they use that continues to evolve and takes a story farther. And I care about these characters. And that's a sign of great writing to me. And to your point, great art. I think when there's an emotional resonance to what's going on in these stories that are so interesting. And I really, when we were talking about earlier, what book do we want to talk about first? I'm a Batman junkie. We're talking about Batman and Detective next. And, you've got me on those because that's been my guy all the way through. I really wanted to start with talking about Wonder Woman. I'm very excited about this book. And I think it says something when you're sitting here saying, let's talk Wonder Woman. DC's got a lot of titles like this right now that are they're going to be really doing some cool things. Hey, but from a DC News standpoint, you see what Bendis has taken over?
No, I did not.
Superman books.
Ooh,
he's
nice.
Actually going to do. He's going to be doing Action Comics 1000.
Oh, okay, cool.
But I mean, he's going to be taking over the Superman books in general too. They did a preview art piece and things like that. Do you see what Scott Snyder's doing next?
No.
Justice League.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So it's
we're gonna have to put that back on the rotation. We haven't talked Justice League in a long time.
No, honestly, there's a lot of books that we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
That's part of the point. Like, I really wanted to talk Batman and Detective for the events that are going on this episode, but I want to make sure as we're doing some of our favorite books as we go through, that we're throwing in a title like Wonder Woman was essential to talk about on this episode. We've got to start rotating in some titles that we haven't talked about in a long time. Just for the purpose, I actually want to talk about the Young Animals crossover that's going on right now. There's a lot of good stuff going on right now that I think are jump-on points for people to particular titles. I think the Robinson run, if you haven't been reading Wonder Woman, this is a great run to jump on. And you can jump on the Silver Swan storyline. I think you can pick up what's going on pretty quickly. I would go back to the beginning of Robinson's run myself just because I think the Grail storyline is really setting something up. But if you're like, hey, I like Wonder Woman the movies, I've just never read her in comics, where do I get on board? I would start with James Robinson's first issue. It's one arc before this one, and kicks you off with the Grail storyline, the Dark Side, introduces Jason, gives you everything you need right now to be kind of caught up to speed. But speaking of Wonder Woman, I think it's a great time why don't we talk about Batman number 39, Jim, and what's going on over there, because Wonder Woman's actually featured in that issue. So let's have a talk about it.
Our next discussion's on Batman number 39, the scripts by Tom King with interiors by Joel Jones, cover by Jordi Belair with letters by Clayton Cowles, Mikel Janin on covers with Oliver Coipel and Dave Stewart on the variant covers. Maggie Howell is assistant editor. Jamie Rich is editor. Batman was created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger, and sorry about that.
Jordi Belair is on color, by the way. You said cover, and
I said cover. Oops. Sorry.
No. It's honestly, I run into the same thing when you're trying to get the names right. And please know that for anybody listening to this, our intention isn't to butcher names. We want to give credit to the people that have been doing these books, and you don't always want to spell out everybody's names, but we know a lot of times we get names wrong with pronunciations and things like that. It's certainly not an intention of disrespect. The reason why we mention them, I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that these books are put together by teams. I think just an awareness of people behind the scenes who are doing this, and they're names that I like the fact that when we read them out on the show, the names, even if they're pronounced improperly, you start to have an identity for who these people are, what they do, other projects they're on. As I start to recognize, for example, colorists. When colorists are on multiple books that I'm reading, or they go on to new projects later on, because a lot of times we'll see colorists that are with one creative team but not with the other. And you'll see them working on other projects at different times. It's nice to be able to identify things that you like and are enjoying in tone and mood, and associating them with the various levels of creative. Letters is another example of that. I'm still I've been reading comics my entire life. I know times where I'll see lettering choices that really add a dynamic nature to what I'm reading. I'm not an expert on what that looks like, but I do recognize the fact that a lot of the emotional resonance that goes onto a scene is done by the lettering work that's done. And I really am liking the fact that I'm starting to become more familiar with the people that are doing that work. So that's why we do this piece. This book, oh my gosh. On script writing, Tom King is just hitting this out of the park. And what I like about this is he really understands Batman as a character. We talked about this during his run with Tim Seeley on Grayson. Excuse me. His understanding of Dick Grayson as a character. And we're seeing it here with Bruce Wayne and an understanding of Bruce both in and out of the costume. You know, the duality of the fact that there's Bruce Wayne, there's Batman, and there's that other person in between. That I think we're really seeing an evolution of the character that comes from the foundation of who Batman is. I'm loving this. I'm loving the relationship with Catwoman. I'm loving the fact that we're seeing that relationship kind of evolve the way that he operates. The Super Friends storyline, seeing him with Clark and Lois on the double date, I thought was... It took me back to my childhood because we saw double dates between characters in my childhood. You know, you saw these characters gradually start to become friends. I loved Diana and, not Diana, I'm sorry. Sorry. Selena and Lois start to develop a friendship. It was like a tentative feeling out and then finding not only common ground, but things to appreciate about each other in the way that all played out, as well as I think we saw a different layer to the friendship between Clark and Bruce in that storyline. All of it spinning out of what we know from the foundation of these characters. I think that's where it's more accessible and more important. You feel like you talk about progression. It's something that you've talked about since the beginning of this podcast, something that you like seeing in comics a lot and you want to see more of. This is a heck of an example of bold progression. And I appreciate when comic companies do this and really have it become a change agent to the kind of stories that you can tell. This isn't limiting when you start advancing characters in a relationship like this. It's telling new stories. We're getting stories in Batman now that you only were able to kind of give a glimpse of in Earth 2. Well, they're saying, forget Earth 2. We're doing it here. and it's happening in real time. And you're going to, see what that looks like and how it affects Batman's world in a huge way. Because it affects everyone that's connected to Batman in every way. The fact that this is going forward. And really advances and makes his world so interesting, both in interactions with villains and with friends and with family and with colleagues. And I love seeing how this is playing out because some people love it, some people hate it. I'm talking about like in the book, the actual characters, and some people fall in the middle of it. And it's a very interesting time to be reading the main Batman title. And what I love about this is this storyline's going on here, and it's so impactful. And I feel at the same time we've got a huge storyline going on in Detective Comics that I think is a very different lens into Batman's world, but it's the same guy. And I really am loving the bold nature of Batman comics right now. Not including Metal, which we talked about last episode, which is having a huge impact on the world. And I did you read the most recent issue of Metal?
Yes.
And I mean, another storyline where it's like, woof. Could there be more cool Batman stuff going on right now? I don't think so. And I'm loving that every bit of it's happening at a time where I feel like this is all, Metal's the one that's not happening concurrently. I know that either Metal has already happened or takes place after this. We're going to get some clarification as far as timeline for Metal. I'm fine with that popping up wherever, but oh my gosh. And Doomsday Clock, he's having an effect. Batman's all over the place.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more interested and excited in what they're doing with Batman because he's on Justice League as well. So, I don't know. It's just, as a Batman fan, there comes a time where there's, over the years, and Wolverine has fallen victim to this too, the characters being overexposed. And I think that happens when you're not telling stories in individual books that are having major forward movement for the character. So then you feel like, okay, great, another Wolverine story. Great, another Batman story. Where is there a sense of, like you've said, progression? Where do I feel the character's evolving and impacted by the things that are happening to him? What I love about what's going on right now, and actually Wolverine's another great character to talk about with this, both characters have something in common right now in that the creative teams that are working with them are doing some interesting things with the characters that make you feel like there is an evolution of the character. And I won't go crazy into the whole Wolverine bit right now, but there's a ton of stuff going on with Wolverine over there, and I like that. I think that's where you can afford to have a character then in like 8 books, and you don't have to be reading all of them. You can read if you're a fan of the Batman main title, and like you're like, it's my one Batman book I can read. There is a satisfying, very contained, very evolutionary story in this. If Detective Comics is more your thing, you can be reading that right now, get a complete and a great story, evolution of the characters involved, and it's very satisfying. If you're reading all of it, you get this larger lens into the Batman's entire world and what's going on right now that is still compelling and incredibly satisfying, and none of it's cookie cutter. So I think that's well done comics. That's when you take a character and you don't spread them too thin. You're using them in a way that just makes sense. And it's why that character is in those books, because they're an agent of reaction. They cause something different. Batman's on 2 Justice League teams. I mean, and his impact on those teams is very different in both books. And that's something that I'm really digging as well. We do got to go back to Justice League at some point. You're right.
Okay. It's funny. I love when you just go off on tangents and you just go off on a Batman run.
Well, it is. You know what?
Hold on, dude. I'm laughing, but it is a neat thing to see because you see your passion, and you know, because you do this with Hawkman too. I know whenever we're talking those 2 characters, I'm just going to sit back for a little bit and let you go because you say some really cool and powerful stuff, and you say some true stuff that I completely agree with you on. So I'm laughing here, but I'm not really laughing at you. I'm laughing with you because I agree with you on the usage of Batman. I agree with you on the usage of Bruce Wayne and this whole relationship and the connection between the Trinity and everything they're exploring in the Bat titles, everything they're exploring in Detective, what they're exploring in the Trinity title. Anytime they're using Batman, it seems like I don't know if there's an editor note or if there's something going on there. It happens to be great creators who are using him. They get it, and they keep this guy connected. This Batman's the same as the Batman I'm reading in Detective as I am in Justice League. This is the same Batman who will appear periodically on Super Sons, and the same Batman and Bruce and Clark, that I love them in Super Sons. Anytime they make little bit appearances in Super Sons, I'm like, oh, that's awesome, because it's that same kind of connection. And as this whole engagement and marriage coming down the line has been going, I've been absolutely loving it because we are getting this side of Bruce. We are getting the side of Bruce and Clark and Diana. We are getting the side of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. We're getting to see it's not just progression of the character. It is just this wonderful story that is unfolding in front of us. And it's, the story told here, story told Detective, story told all these different places. We're getting this. This is why you and I from day one have been saying, why can't these people get married? Why can't we can give great, stories about them and their significant other, especially if you pick the right person with them. Lois and Clark, right combination. Bruce and Selena, right combination. Ollie and Dinah, right combination. You get these right combinations of the male and female, or female and female, or and if you get this right couple, you can actually tell a great superhero and a great person story behind the mask story, and that's what we're getting in these things.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I like you're talking about the duality of the person behind the mask, and I always mention the 3 layers of Batman. It's probably not fair to even give just 3 because there's probably 4. Because there's Batman, there's Bruce Wayne, and then there's the guy that Alfred always sees. And I think that's the one we're seeing with Selena. But I think that's kind of a Bruce that nobody's ever seen before. I think Selena's got her own Bruce now that maybe is a 4th Bruce that we have, that maybe is honest to a level that he never was with Alfred, if that's even fair to say. But I think it's because there's been a part of Bruce. What's interesting about Batman? He's guarded, right? We know that there's times where we love the Batman and Robin run. And one of the things we talk about the family aspect of that book, we saw Batman open up in that title in a way that Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason were telling us things about Batman that we had never seen before. Never seen him open up in that way before, learning to be a different kind of person than he ever was before. And there was something, when you saw those moments, because they were all glimpses, they were always satisfying because of it. I think we're seeing with Catwoman, and what I'm really loving with what Tom King's doing right now, he's showing us, he's peeling apart a different layer on this onion that we've never seen before. And it comes from everything we know about this character, everything we love about this character, but it's showing us a different vulnerability to this character that we've never seen before. And it's almost powerfully uncomfortable to see a layer exposed of Bruce that we never knew existed. And that's something that's, I think, shocking about this run, and I'm really enjoying the bold nature of this run because of it, because he's taking some risks. But he's doing it in a calculated way that shows he knows the character. You gotta come from that foundation. If you aren't, and you don't know the character, and you peel that layer away, and you throw it out there and you get it wrong, it's gonna backfire. And fans are gonna be, they're gonna run away. What he's done here is you can make that bold step. You can take that challenge and show us something about Bruce that we've never seen before in a way that is incredibly satisfying. Yeah, it's got the fan community talking in a way that, some fans are going to be kind of like uncomfortable with this. And I get it. And because there's times when I've read this where I'm like, whoa, Bruce said what? Because the reveal of, the horrible things that happened during the Joker and Riddler war that were going on. There were some choices that Batman made there that how do I feel about all that? But yet, that was a piece of the onion that Bruce peeled off for Selina. And because he wanted her to know all of him, his strengths and his weaknesses, his brightest moment and his darkest moment. And we as the fans got to see that for the first time, and you sit there and go, whoa, that was really uncomfortable in that moment. Yet he was sharing that with Selina, and we got it shared with us too because of it. And I'm still reeling from it in a way that I think is that's good comics, really good comics.
Well, and if to your point, that's why I think you have to now say there's 4 layers of Batman, because I don't think he would ever reveal that to anyone other than Selina. And I think that is the kind of really cool faction to show about Bruce, who he is and how much he's grown. How big is Team Batman now? He never was like that. And now he's embracing this team dynamic. He's giving control and power to other people. Batwoman was in charge of that team. He was not. He stepped away from it. He made Tim is the lieutenant, but he's like, hey, this is your team. You do it. And I love seeing that, and just that kind of that realization of that the level of trust he has for Selina, that he opens up to her, and to a way to her that he never would to Alfred. It was an awesome realization throughout that story, and this isn't just about a proposal to increase sales. This is about a development and growth of this character. And those are the best whoa moments, when it's not just a it's not just a moment to have a moment. It's actually a moment to take the character to the next level, to start something new, to start something fresh, to start something that can lead into something beyond what he currently is. And I so hope to God they let them go through with the wedding, and they let it happen, and we don't miss out on this, because I want to see the wedding plus. I want to see beyond. I want to see what happens, because that's just I'm worried. I'm always worried when you get moments where it's looking like something really cool could happen, they could turn it into a tragedy, and I hope that doesn't happen for Bruce on this one.
It's interesting how this feels like a real relationship. This isn't a story about Catwoman changing for Bruce. It's about both of them loving and respecting who each other is, but at the same time, they both, because of the fact that they want to be together and they love each other, have to change elements of themselves, open up things that they never have before in ways that they never probably thought was possible. And I like that part because it is, if it's just the woman changing for the man or the man changing for the woman, there's nothing organic about that. It's ultimately going to fail because there's no meeting in the middle. You know, it's heavily weighted one side or the other. As a couple, you make changes together, and the changes are usually organic, and it's about how do we make us work, while at the same time not giving up who we are. That's the interesting part of this story because he's still Batman, so 100% still Batman. In many ways, maybe becoming a better Batman because of the fact that he's learning more about who he is than he ever has before, kind of solidifying the person, by opening up those layers to her. And yet we're seeing her become something new as well, but not giving up the Catwoman that we know and love. It's so fun and interesting to follow this storyline between the two. I loved the we didn't talk about on the show, the confrontation with Talia. I mean, that stuff was incredible. Really great writing. And I thought it was some great moments from Talia, from Bruce, and from Catwoman in that whole scenario, because we had some Bruce and Talia moments where they were sitting down chatting, and Talia even says, so I like her. I mean, after that whole crazy battle and sequence, it was sweet. I really, really enjoyed how this has been playing out. Each issue I run to. And you were talking earlier about how the Hawkman comparison and things like that. It's funny, on the show, you know, you kind of portray yourself as you're a Batman guy. I'm a Batman guy, you're a Superman guy, that type of thing. And we both know that's so not that simple. You know, I always say I'm a Hawkman guy. And the Hawkman thing became, I think, because in our first episode, I'm a huge, gigantic Hawkman fan. And on that first episode, you had issues with Shadow War the Hawk, and it just became an ongoing thing from us ever since. The love for Hawkman is 110% insane and genuine, but it's not the only character. Batman's my guy who brought me to the dance, so your comparison's true. And yeah, there was a drool bucket. I was salivating through this whole thing. But I also do that with characters like The Flash, for example, and Green Arrow. These are characters who, you know, the Mike Grell run of Green Arrow defined that as a character who I just love. And I constantly read and love Green Arrow since that whole era. The Flash is another one. Really, the Mark Waid run is the one, when he kicked on that book, Wally was the one that brought me to the dance and really got to know Barry through Wally. You know, then we got Bart and then Barry's Return and, you know, huge Flash fan in the same way. When these characters have major stories, and Wonder Woman's in that category now too, there's a huge impact of those stories. So it's not just as simple as you're the Superman guy, I'm the Batman guy. You and I both have multiple characters that we have a passion for that fall on this level. And when Batman's one of those characters and he's having a major storyline going on in all of his books, you know, that are so evolutionary to the character, my monthly reading is just so satisfying. I've gone through, you know, and none of this is like a sob story or violin story. I've been going through some health issues the past 2 months that, you know, some of which have been pretty scary. I'm fortunately on the other side now and, you know, heavily in the recovery. Like, I feel really great now, which is a good thing. But you know what gets you through this stuff? And a chance to escape. And what gets you through that? These books. I mean, this has been such a great time to be a fan of DC. Not just the great comics, but the media. You know, Gotham by Gaslight came out, which, if you haven't watched that, for anybody listening to this, I don't know if you've even seen it yet, Jim, and if you haven't, I cannot recommend it enough. Such a great animated movie. Television has been phenomenal. Film, you know, we've got, you know, Justice League has just been released. We've got more DC film on the horizon. I don't know. It's just such a fun time. And in gaming, Injustice is a great game. So I'm just loving DC right now. I'm loving the fact that it's a multimedia company, and we're seeing, you know, our heroes in so many different places, and that's continuing to grow. Animation, we've got them as well. So I don't know. This is just fun for me right now. I'm looking right now at the sequence right now where Jim Gordon's running up to the roof. He's like, who did the bat signal? You know, we know what the rule is for this, you know, that type of thing. And He comes running through, no exaggeration. I'm going to kill, because he thinks it's one of the police officers, him, and standing there looking so majestic in that artwork is Wonder Woman. And man, is she a strikingly powerful character. I love the color shading and tone. She's in Batman's world right now, but she stands tall and looks so majestic. And I mean, the artwork off of that, what I really love about that page is not just her visual, the reflection in the rain down below, where you see the bat signal and her reflection. It's just a gorgeous shot and a great opening sequence when you see her. The attention that the art team, and it's the whole art team that had to make that come to life the way that it is. There's certain panels that are striking when you see them for a purpose. And they take I just know looking at that took a lot of work to put together. And it meant something to me the second that I saw that panel, because I looked at that one a lot and really admired. Especially, I love when artists take the time to do rain effects or reflection effects like that, because it's not clean. It looks very much like rain's falling on it, so you see it being disrupted by the rain. Doing that is not easy by any stretch, and I really appreciated the majesty of not only seeing her, but the reflection down there below. Because you see the reflection of the entire thing, the bat signal, everything in there. And I was just impressed. It looked really sharp to me.
Oh, God, yeah. This art style is dramatically different than the last book we talked about, than Wonder Woman book, but it's still, both of them have that, they take your breath away. And they have that moments where this art style is fitting this story being told. The Wonder Woman story that art was fitting that story. This is another one of those tag teams where you've got a great writer and a great, creator of the story, and then the physical elements of the story are now coming to, this is a good merging of word and art. And I think that, for me, again, one of the things I loved about this, I've been loving the stories, I've been loving what we're getting, but the art selection, the art choices, you talk about the rain effect, you talk about the majesty that Wonder Woman has. I completely agree with you. And in going on in that sequence, I loved how Gordon's a little bit stumbling when he's dealing, because this is Wonder Woman. She's got to have that majestic. And even he's like, well, I'm sure Batman will be along shortly. He's behind you. And again, great moment. Look on her face. Look at Gordon's like, yeah, right. Okay, of course he is. And sure enough, Bruce is standing right back. I love just how they went with that, because again, this is Batman. But even then, going on to the next page, you see Bruce and Diana talking, and kind of when she says, he's like, you could have used the communicator. He's like, true, but I wanted to try the signal. I thought it might be fun. You see a little bit of grimace, a little bit of smirk, kind of, funny, kind of like a little smile, slight smile on Bruce's face as he's saying, how can I help you? I thought that for me was another cool moment. I loved the majestic, but I did love the fact that you kind of do see, there is the connection between these two. They are two-thirds of the Trinity, and it is, he has to have this a different comfort level with Diana and with Clark than he has with the other heroes, and I love seeing it in just little bits like this.
I loved the visual sequence of the sequence you're talking about, where you see almost their demeanor shift. The gentleman has contacted me. He is ready. Are you? Now, this whole gentleman piece, I love this storyline, because he was a little devious in the promise that he had. They agreed to fill in for him to give him a chance. I'm hoping he's on the up and up and that he'll go back willingly. But here's going to be the big problem with him. He didn't tell them how long they would be stuck in that world. 10 minutes of our time is like 10 years for them. I'm poorly saying what the time frame is, but it's certainly a lot faster when you're in that world. So they were stuck there, giving him a little break, a few days for him outside in our world. For them is the number of years that they're trapped in there together, with this sense of, am I ever going to leave? And I love this part of the storyline, because what does that do to a person when you're stuck over there and you've only got one other person with you, and years are passing, not days, not hours, years are passing. There's this sense of, is he ever going to come back? And are we ever going to leave? And if not, is it only just us forever? Wow. Just a great story. I know I'm jumping ahead to that, but I think it's such a pivotal part of this issue. As you see him with his battle, this battle that he's been going through has been going on for thousands of years. What is life and death like in that world is an interesting piece for me.
Yeah, and it was neat because when they first introduced, I was trying to remember, okay, when did they show any of this? And I was trying to, did I miss something? Did I forget something I read in the past? And they gave us enough pages to give you enough of the story, and then as the story starts fleshing out, you really do understand what they're talking about with this horde is everlasting. And you see it, even Batman, even Bruce and Diana start to get, it starts wearing on them, and they're constantly fighting. They are constantly fighting. It's not just, oh yeah, okay. No, it's a constant battle. It just horde after horde after horde keeps coming at you. And I love the fact that in a way you can kind of see it starting to kind of break Bruce and Diana. And I think if one of them were there by themselves, they would have a harder time dealing with this. But because the two of them are there, they're able to lean on each other. They're able to, be there for each other and be each other's strengths. When one needs to take a breather, the other one throws down. And, and it's, and as we said, they've been there hours in our time, but it's 10 years in this plane. And for me, the first thought that popped in my head was, man, that would be the greatest training protocols imaginable. If you could survive the everlasting hordes, you would have thousands of years of combat experience in a single year. Amazons, League of Assassins, anybody and everybody who does the hand-to-hand manual, any of the Arrow universe, any of them who do manual weaponry, think about just how much time and experience you would have. Now, if you're by yourself, it's going to drive you mad. So you go over there with a team, and then all these different. I'm thinking, man, they'd be kind of neat to do all this kind of stuff for within this, showing other ways to keep to pull Bruce and Diana back out, other ways to give the gentleman a more of a break where it's not just them. And there's so many different things that possibilities are flying through my head in this story that I almost missed something, and I liked seeing with the interaction between Selina and the gentleman, where she's his host, she's his guide in the world and taking him around, because they're all assuming that he hasn't been in this world for thousands of years. In reality, it's only been 1 year. So yes, time does change stuff in a year, but not that much. And I love the fact that, Selina starts putting things together going, we may have an issue here. If he was only gone a year, wait a minute, you were only gone a year, but been there thousands of years. And I love the fact that she immediately starts realizing the ramifications. She immediately starts thinking that, and though we're not getting the thought bubbles from her, I can imagine she's thinking, okay, how do I get Bruce back now? I can imagine, thinking, how her thought process is going, because Selina, she's a player. She plays the game. She knows. So she's on the outs looking at this guy like, can I trust him? And I like that immediately, just how you saw her body mechanics and just how she was sitting and just how everything about her kind of personally changed when she started realizing what was going on over there, what she started realizing they were going through. And I thought that for me was a really cool moment.
The whole Horde storyline is great. What I really loved, and I want to step back a little bit, Selina's reactions with Bruce in the beginning when she's talking about this whole thing with him, to talking about him having a thing. I don't have a thing. You have a thing. I'm loving the interplay between the two. It's what do we always love in Batman books? We talk about the interaction between Damian and Bruce, Tim and Bruce, Alfred and Bruce, Jim Gordon and Bruce. Selina is somebody who always has had great interactions with Bruce. We've always enjoyed the Catwoman and Batman interplay. This is an evolution of that. It builds off of what we've already loved between the two. She knows him in a way that nobody ever could. I mean, from their tete-a-tete over the years, they've had the cat and mouse game, no pun intended, that has gone, and I really don't mean it that way, that has gone on between the two, that it's truly, there's no other way to describe it. That's what's going on. But through that, they saw layers to each other that nobody ever saw in them before. And in ways saw similarities between the two of them. that they both like. Here's the thing: for as much as Bruce has his mission and everything, he likes being Batman. She likes being Catwoman. It's interesting to see these two together. That's a piece that nobody can understand the way that they do because of how long they've been at it together. Because I think that's the similarity between the two of them. There's something to, both have come out of tragedies of certain sorts that they can understand, that their drive comes from. And in some ways, as they grow closer together in understanding, their ways of operating as both of those characters is going to evolve and change. And I'm so loving the fact that who is guiding this guy around the city? Selina, not Alfred. Not Tim, not Dick. Selina is the one that he trusted to handle this. The trust level that has grown between the two of them now is huge in this whole scenario. And I really love the way this storyline's playing out. Because yes, you're right, she's discovering it through it. She wouldn't be discovering it if she wasn't the trusted agent that is handling this. This is his right hand right now. He trusts her with this. He knows she can handle it. And knows that he can trust her to stick with it no matter what. And in some ways, she's going to be the agent of protecting him in this whole thing. So Wonder Woman and Batman, what's going on there right now? We got to jump to it. Oh, well, go ahead. No, go ahead. Let me go to it.
One quick thing I just noted, and I just noticed it right now.
Go for it.
With that sequence where they're in the cave and the Chuck, when he first comes out in the Bat Knight armor, and she's like, "You look ridiculous," and just then it goes over to with Bruce and Diana talking, and she's like, "No, you don't look ridiculous," and you have that great dialogue between Bruce and Diana about just how she thinks all men look ridiculous, and when they're in combat and that kind of stuff. I always took the part that took place in the cave right after Selina said it. It didn't. The Bruce and Diana conversation takes place in the park. So not only do we have the cave, then there's the brooding from the cave to the park between the two of them. So I can just imagine either Bruce was silently brooding and then Diana finally said, "Hey, buddy, calm down, just relax, buddy." Or throughout the entire ride over there, he was brooding about the costume or brooding about being ridiculous. There's something that happened off page there that just, again, it further shows the connection between these three characters. Further shows just the personal connection because Selina is with them in the park because she picks up the Knight when they transfer over. So now you got these three, whether it's probably Bruce and Selina in the Batmobile traveling there, Wonder Woman taking her own, transportation, flying and whatnot. But I could just imagine the conversation that's going on in the Batmobile between Batman and Catwoman while he's in the armor, furthering the "I look ridiculous." No, you look ridiculous. There's a conversation in my head happening between the two of them.
It's really interesting, the passage of time that they do demonstrate in this book. Because later, it becomes a thing where Wonder Woman's, kind of cleaning herself up with the battle that they've been going through. Because it's constant. You can't even, anything that's a respite for the two of them, it's brief, very brief between the two of them. And they're back at the fighting. And we get this real sense of longevity between the two of them. So 10 years, so here's the thing. 10 years, and he's like, "At least. We have tried. We must concede. We cannot open the gate without him, and he does not come." So I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with them. I'm going to that piece. My prediction on this, and we're recording it before the issue is released, I think there may be a kiss, but if there is, Bruce is going to realize he loves Selina. Because I think the relationship's that strong. I'm going to be very curious to see where this goes. I'm team Bruce and Selina right now, very heavily so. And I think it's genuine.
And here's the thing. I'm team Bruce and Selina, and part of me wonders if they're going to do that TV moment where just as they're about to kiss, something happens. Another horde swarms in, and they don't get to finish their kiss. But part of me, I don't think they're going to do that. I think we're actually going to get a kiss. And I think we're going to get a relationship developed between Batman and Wonder Woman. And they will eventually come back to the world, come back to, our world. And then they'll have to deal with the fact that they just had this 10, 20-year-long relationship. and how do they go back to not having it? And I think that's going to be the next part of the story, where will this, because I think it's going to be more than just a single kiss. I think they're going to actually start something, and it's going to go on. And there's, again, I don't know how far it's going to go, but I'm pretty sure it's going to go far enough that it's one of those moments where does it end the friendship? Because when they come back and only, a month or so has gone by, or a year has gone by, they're like, wait a minute, what do you mean? It's been 40 plus years for us, or 1,000 or 100 years. Who know? They're going to be there a while. And I think there's going to be this solid, relationship that develops between them. So when he comes back to the world, he's going to have to figure something out. I think that's going to be the interesting process.
And I hope not. And here's the reason why. And let me clarify this too. What you just described is an interesting story. I agree with it. Far more interested in seeing him realize that he loves Selena that much. I want to see it. And what you presented is an interesting. It's not me saying, boy, that story would stink. It's not that. And I see the possibility of it. So I'm nodding as you're saying it and going, okay, that's a possibility. The other possibility is that he stops it.
Yeah.
And chooses to stop it. And I don't know. I'm finding either story option, and there's just everything in between that could happen as well too. Like you said, a horde could come in and cause it not to happen, whatever. All of those things I think are interesting story elements. I'm very content to enjoy whatever direction Tom King is taking us in, and gleefully content to enjoy it because I'm enjoying this ride. And that's really important, and it is. I have my own preferences on what I want to happen and why I want them to happen, but it's because I'm invested in these characters. And that doesn't mean you dig your heels in and that's the only way it can go or else I'll hate this. It's not that. It's I'm rooting for them as a couple. So you want to believe the whole romantic, true love thing and stuff like that with them. I want to believe it. So I don't think it ruins it if it goes that route. I think you can find your way back together after going through what you're mentioning in your scenario, and I think that's equally compelling. So I'm content to go on that journey as well. I am just really enjoying this ride, and I'm invested in it. Yeah. I really am invested in this, and that's something that I think it says a lot when an outcome of this, I'm rooting for a certain outcome. And it matters enough to me in this storyline to root for that outcome and to just go, oh, I'm all for the two of them. And I want Bruce to see, he loves her and that type of. I care about this relationship that much. This really is bold. This is Clark and Lois. This is Peter and Mary Jane. And I'm a fan of the Spider marriage. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Spider-Man stinks without it. I don't feel that at all. But I feel that the idea that marriages in comics are story limiters, I think I think that's a lazy approach. Now, I have nothing against a team of writers sitting down and saying, listen, here's the kind of Spider-Man stories we want to tell. Here's why. And there's a long-term impact to these type of storylines. So the marriage doesn't work for us for this. Okay. And as fans, so I'm not anti-undoing. Because I read the storyline where they undid the Spider marriage, and quite frankly, I'm still a Spider-Man fan, so let me put that caveat on this. But we saw a Superman where they gave us a reboot of Superman ending that marriage, and I'm gonna say something. I really missed a marriage between Lois and Clark. I wanted his journey, the New 52 Superman's journey, to eventually, as much as I loved him and Diana being together, and I became a huge fan of it, and I stand behind it, the second they gave me a book with Lois and Clark from the previous universe, I'm like, this is what I want. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much I missed it until then, and how much I'm really enjoying Action Comics and Superman right now with the family. You mentioned Super Sons before. Oh my gosh, how great Super Sons is with his son being a part of this world. And I'm just anticipating where this character is going to keep going moving forward. And I'm excited that they brought in Brian Michael Bendis, and where they're going to be putting him? Superman. Yeah, I want to read that. Yeah. I want to see where he's going to take that character. and what he's going to do with the family and those type of things, and what things he's going to bring in, from his own ideas of it. It's exciting. So flipping it back to Batman, I care about this relationship. I care about this becoming a marriage. I want, like you do, issue 50 for it to actually happen. We'll see. I mean, I think that's the rumor, is that issue 50 is supposed to be where the marriage takes place. And that's the problem. Is it going to... Wedding issues don't always lead to the wedding succeeding. There's sometimes reasons why it won't. So you always got to be tentative in comics because you never know where the storyline's going to go. I want this to happen. I want it to, because I think that's going to be, I think it's already added interesting things into Batman's world. I think it will continue to add things into Batman's world. I can't wait to see where this goes. No matter what they do. I have faith. Here's the thing. This says a lot. I have faith in Tom King as a writer and the journey that he's been taking me on, that whatever story he's trying to tell, I need to sit back, relax, enjoy it, speculate, get invested, care about potential outcomes, but be open to just enjoying the journey that he's crafting for me. I think there's a problem if I don't care, and I do. I care heavily. You do too. We're coming at it from different angles, but it's because we care. And I think that's something that's interesting. The story matters to us enough that, oh yeah, I've been thinking this through, and this is really where I want it to go. And we're kind of in different places on it, but not. Where we're both in is we both care about this book deeply. We care about these characters deeply, and we're rooting for them. And we just see this. We see this potentially going in different directions, and it's okay. I'm actually enjoying that. I mean, I think that's going to be fun to follow up on it and kind of go, so where did it go?
And I like the fact that we both want the same ending. We both want the marriage to happen. I see that going one route, and I see the story going one way where Bruce has got to maybe fix it, or maybe Selina will be understanding, towards what happens in this universe. And you see it as, no, he's going to, resist, or he's going to stop this, or he's going to realize. And I think either story would be wonderful.
Agreed.
So we are in a no-lose situation here. If it goes your way, cool. If it goes my way, cool. As long as they both end up at the same spot with them getting married, we're both happy.
or goes a way that we didn't even consider.
There's always option C.
So yeah, it's really fun. Can we talk a little Detective Comics right now?
Yes, please.
Because we just talked about a crazy Batman cliffhanger. We had a crazy cliffhanger in Detective Comics that I really would love to talk about. Jim, our next conversation is going to be about Detective Comics 973. This is the finale of Fall of the Batman. James Tynion, I butcher his last name, I know. I'm just going to spell Tynion. The fourth is the writer. Jesus Marino on pencils, Jason Wright on colors, Sal Cipriano on letters, Guillem March, and Tomeu Mori on cover, Raphael Albuquerque on the variant cover, Dave Wielgoes as the assistant editor, Chris Conroy is the editor, Brian Cunningham is the group editor. Batman, of course, created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And apologies for any name butchery there. This has been... It's very interesting when you've got so much going on in the main Batman title that Detective Comics has just as much going on, and I really struggle over what is my favorite Batman book. In the middle of this, we got Metal going on, which is a whole Scott Snyder event that really, to me, I want to say this in a way I don't want to diminish it, because I don't. Metal is such a separate event for me. Like, it's a huge event. Major impact. I love it. Metal's amazing. But when I'm reading these books, they've got their own huge events going on in them that, that's what I'm really enjoying. I love that Metal hasn't derailed what is going on in the main books. Metal's its own thing, so well crafted, such a pivotal thing, and it's got Snyder's, opus that he's telling over there, and he's doing it so well that we know that spinning out of that's going to be a lot of changes and additions to the DC universe. We're already seeing them come to fruition with these new books that are starting to come out that have been really good so far. But that's its own thing. In Detective Comics, this Fall of the Batman is an incredibly huge event with major implications. We had the Robin from the future, the one that the Tim Drake from the future that we saw years ago in the Jeff Johns storyline. He's back and come to our world because of, very similar to how Dr. Manhattan's change is folded over into the present day, it's folded into his future. And there's characters that don't exist now. Connor was a great example. We saw that, like, he realized when he came back that events in present day are malleable. And his future does not need to happen with this Follow the Batman storyline. But in spite of that, time has a way, and it's something I love about Doctor Who. Doctor Who talks about this, how there's certain events that are key events that you can't change. They need to happen, and time will find a way to right those events and to make those events happen anyway. Clayface's rampage is something I was so rooting for Clayface, because he's one of the characters that I was surprised. I enjoyed the addition of Clayface. I thought Clayface was going to be interesting to have a villain on this. I never saw myself loving the character of Clayface the way that I have in this storyline. And it's one of the things that I think they've done real well with this as a team book. They've spotlighted all of the characters in the right way. I love Cassie in this. I love her relationship with Clayface. I love her relationship with the team, with Spoiler. I love Spoiler and her journey with Tim's death, Tim's return, and how her return didn't all of a sudden whitewash everything that came before. It's made her return awkward. And she still believes, and it's one of the things that are strong about her, she still believes the things that she does. It's impacted her relationship not only with Batman and the team, but with Tim. We see Tim coming back majorly impacted to obsession point, where you can't help but wonder, is Tim in his own way an agent and catalyst of this happening with his growing obsession? Could he have prevented it by stepping away? Could he have prevented it by sticking with his proper role on the team instead of trying to guide the team himself in a way that kind of derailed the original mission? I don't know. There's an interesting storyline here where I love this Tim Drake because this is my Tim Drake. And it's the Tim Drake I've always loved. He's human. And I get why he feels the way he did on his return. And that's something that I'm really loving about this story. I feel Detective Comics has finally righted Tim Drake. And that doesn't mean that I haven't liked what they've done with him before. You and I both talked about it when the New 52 kicked off. We had concerns about Tim Drake, right? I felt like we've both enjoyed the character along the way, and maybe you feel differently than I do. I felt like this was the book that finally got me my Tim back again. And I'm going back to the one from Lonely Place of Dying. So from a team book standpoint, and I'm ignoring Batwoman there, and I'm not trying to, because Batwoman so much is everything I just said about everybody else. It's done a great job of spotlighting everybody to the point, like, I not only care about the individual characters, but I care about their interactions. And when I read a storyline that's called Follow the Batman, I'm like, I'm leaving out two characters right now that I didn't even mention that are just as important to me. I don't want to see this team end. I want to see them come back together again out of this. And that says something. I don't want this to become a solo Batman book out of this.
Oh, I completely agree with you on all. And you know, what you're saying, I was sitting there just nodding my head along with you, especially that last point. I don't want this to go back to being a solo book. And it's not a lack of wanting to see different characters spotlighted. It's the fact that I love this team dynamic. I love how they've balanced the difference between the team and individual spotlights. That is the key to like any great team book. You know, and they've made Detective Comics a great team book. And everything you said about Tim, by the way, I was echoing 100% with you. This is Tim Drake. This is the Robin that, figured out that Bruce was, Batman. This is Lonely Place and Dying. This is, Identity Crisis, Tim Drake, which is, I love that Tim. It's still one of the most tragic moments in comics for me is when he's on the phone with his dad, those final moments. And I still to this day, I get emotional when I think of that moment. And that's because I had such a strong connection to Tim by then. This is Teen Titans, Tim Drake. This is all those different, Tim Drakes that I absolutely, man, this is a great, I kept calling him the heir to the bat. before this was the heir to the bat before Damian came around. And I was 100% like, this is who I want to see put on the mantle. This is who I wanted. And I'm seeing that same guy. And I love how you mentioned that could the events that he saw, the possible future he saw, actually leading him towards down that path? Could this all be, if he had walked away when he came back, could that all the future have been avoided? Or by him being there, by him wanting to make sure that the future doesn't happen, is he forcing it? It's kind of those self-fulfilling prophecy or, I don't know what the exact terminology, correct terminology is, but when you're sitting there trying to avoid event and your actions directly cause that event.
Yes.
And I think that for me is something I'm seeing with Tim. And again, doesn't take anything away from Tim, because in his heart right now, this Tim Drake that we're currently seeing is doing this for the most noble of purposes. He is trying to save the city. He is trying to save his team. He's looking at any other option that could possibly strengthen the Batman. What could possibly strengthen the Gotham Knights? What can make them, better? Well, maybe an alliance would work better for the team. Maybe we could work this out. Maybe using this type of tech or doing this. I love seeing that side of Tim. Granted, there's issues, and you're like, I don't know, you shouldn't, Tim, but I understand where he's coming from, and it feels like it is Tim. And I love these sequences where they showed, months ago with him beefing up the Belfry and how much of his personal touch he put into the Belfry. Throughout the run, we've seen that, he designed it and he built it, but you really get to see just this level of personal hands-on details and personal hands-on touch that he had with developing developing the mudroom, developing just what is the Belfry. And I was like, I've loved seeing that.
So one of the things that's really great about this is there were so many things that he was doing in secret, and he finally gets called on it. And that's the problem. It's supposed to be a team. They aren't working like a team. They're surface level working as a team, but behind the scenes, there are chinks in the armor, huge chinks in the armor. And Tim's one of them. I mean, think about what he went through. And it's something that needs to be addressed. He was taken out of, basically, everyone thought he was dead. He was in prison. Encounters his future self. His future self paints a very bleak world of what's going to happen. And Tim is watching everything that he put together crumble in front of him. This issue. The Belfry, destroyed, gone. Everything that he's tried to prevent is coming to fruition. And what I loved about this storyline is throughout this issue, we did start to see Tim get back on board, which was something that I really started to enjoy in this series. But it's not that simple, because he still has the worries and beliefs that he had along the way. This Clayface storyline is going to have a major impact on his relationship with Cassie. Spoiler, Stephanie. Thinking back to the days of Wonder Girl. Sorry, spoiler, Stephanie. It's going to have a major impact on the relationship with Spoiler. I guess in some ways it would have a relationship impact on Cassie as well. But Cassandra Cain more than anything else. I don't know. I'm really loving this, and we've got the first victim storyline and Batman going on there. Clayface as this overwhelming monster with powers, and the fact that he's more dangerous because of the training that he got from the Bat family, I think was something that I really enjoyed in this arc. It showed that Bruce was keeping his promise to Clayface and was doing everything he can to try and cure him. And I liked that about Batman. As a kid, I grew up with, the 66 show, and there was a big push in that for Batman wanting to rehabilitate the villains that he could reach. We actually see that in Killing Joke. You go to Killing Joke, one of the premises of Killing Joke when it kicks off in the beginning is, we are in this hopeless cycle. Let's break the cycle. That is a very Batman thing. It's no kill code and things like that. Why do so many of them go to Arkham? Because he's hoping that at least some of them will become something more, will change. And there's a point to that. And that's got to be your hope, right? If you believe in the system, the legal system, the judicial system, the prison system, it's that some people come out better and actually can have a fresh start. and can become something new. I don't know. I loved the Clayface story. If it ends here, is a tragedy for me because I'm loving that character. So I'm hoping it's not the end of him. I'm hoping we do see more Basil. I'm afraid that it is, but I want to be wrong.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm complete agreement with you. And I love what they've done with Clayface. Just from you think back to the very introduction with him as on this team. That very first. It's a scene that I don't remember which issue it was, but it was the very first time he was on Detective Comics with this team, and they're watching Batman get beat up on the video right before Batwoman and the team went out. And Clayface makes the comment, "Nice punch," as the one dude lays a good clocker on Batman. They look at him, and he's like, "What? It was." I still remember that moment. Just from that introduction, going, "Okay, this should be interesting with having Clayface on the team," and then you see the character. You see when he starts able to make do a casting call. You see him interacting with Orphan, and just trying to get her to, going through Shakespeare just so she would actually physically speak, and then her slowly learning to speak. And you see this connection and bond between the two of them. And the one page I love, the one panel I love more than anything is this opening sequence after, Tim's out and Tim's unconscious. Batman swooping in, and you see, Orphan sitting there saying, "So scared, needs help." But I love the fact she's got a tear in her eye. I love the fact they put that in there because she has been one of those characters who repressed emotions, who didn't show, who didn't feel. Well, she's starting to feel. She especially sees this is her friend who's helped her, who needs her help now. And I love that, just the fact that she's opening up her emotions. And, we get that. And it's just not even a large panel, but just the fact that she's got the tear there for her friend was something I was like, man, that's cool.
Yeah, that's something that really stands out for me in this. It's the emotional piece. And there's characters that we aren't even addressing, and I want to talk about them real quick. Batwing. And, of course, Azrael, who are also emotional members of the team. It's one of the nice things I like about the size of this team is you can zoom in and out on your focus of certain characters based on, the emotional connection between Clayface and Cassie needs to be in the forefront here because of the fact that it's been such a pivotal piece of this. She's been the connection to his human side. She, in many ways, understands this. Is there a road to redemption? Think about her in Spoiler. She caused so much hardship for Spoiler that got in the way of their friendship for the longest time. But Cassandra found a way to keep persevering and to stick with Team Batman and to become something more as Orphan. She wants that for Clayface. She wants that redemption. They're alike. And she needs that connection of, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who's like this. You're not alone. You're not the only one who's like this. We can be something more together. He genuinely cares for her. I love that this is such a story of, I want to be careful. I'm going to use a Hulk comparison here, but I don't want to make it seem like it's cookie cutter like that. I really love characters who are monsters like the Hulk when you get into the psychological component to it. You talk about the fact that, yeah, is this a part of Basil Karlo? Yes. And Dr. October confirms that. He has, like any other human does, multiple layers to, this seems to be our theme this episode, right? The layers of somebody's personality. He has that layer there of violence and anger and rage to him. But there's those other pieces too. And for him to be able to control and make real decisions for himself is their quest here. How do we get Basil to the point where he can control that and actually make those choices like any other human being would? And, where we start to learn who the real Basil Karlo is, I think we've seen it in these pages, but we've never seen him confident in that. And I want to see that continue. I'm afraid this story will be a tragedy, and it's an interesting tragedy and an emotional tragedy. So if it winds up being the case that this is it for Basil, at least as we know him, because I don't think Clayface is done. I think we're going to see Clayface again, but I think the bullet at the end, I think, may have done its job. I don't know. I'm so anxious to see where this story goes, and I'm rooting for Clayface. I care enough about the character that I'm rooting for him. I want to see Clayface win and gradually become something more. That's why this book as a team book is so needed. This is going to cause fracturing and splintering of the team right now. I know it. Like any team that splinters and fractures, though, it can be put back together and rebuilt again if the right desire is there. And I think this team cares about each other enough that they can come back together. Batwoman's going to have a lot to answer for.
She got a lot of explaining to do.
In some ways, she's got the same problem Tim has, though. They stopped being a team. They started becoming free agents. And this is really... And Spoiler had the same problem. These are issues with three key players in this. Batwoman, Tim, and Spoiler. They started becoming free agents and doing their own thing. And I'm fans of all three. But they're like those friends you want to pull aside and smack upside the head. And it's because I care about the characters so much that they all three have valid points. All three of them. Spoiler does too. And yet their biggest mistake is not sitting down with their teammates and trusting them to work through it with them. And that's what you got to do as a team. Mm-hmm. If you're going to stay a team, you have to put your cards out on the table. You have to talk it through. And as a team, you have to come to a compromise that everyone believes in. And it's a compromise, which means everybody's giving up something, but everybody's gaining something out of it. And ultimately, the thing that they're gaining is a stronger team by doing what's best for the team and ultimately for your mission as a team. And that might mean a changing of your mission, evolving your mission to match where the team's currently at as members. So that way everybody feels invested in your direction and where you're going. But you got to do that. And that's what I care about with this team so much. I'm like, wow, I really want this team to succeed. Because it's so human. It's not just a cookie cutter, we got together and we're going to fight evil. Ha ha ha. There's so much depth to the mission and what they're trying to do that I care about this team and invest in this team. I'm going to say right now, this is my favorite team in the DC universe right now. This is the team that I'm really invested in. And I'm saying I'm putting that ahead of the Justice League right now. I think this team, the dynamic, the interpersonal relationships of it, I like that it's not clean. That's human. It feels like a group. Like, here's the thing. You and I have the same friendship group, right? Imagine all of us getting together and trying to form a team. We would have these issues, right? No, I mean, really, you would. Because look at you and I. We do a podcast together. We've done for over 11 years. We're going on our 12th year now, right?
Yep.
One of the things that's fun for us is our differences doing it. We've come to respect it. It's far more interesting to do a podcast with somebody who sees things differently than I do. Here's the times where you and I are high-fiving going, well, yeah, that's exactly what we both want. But it's just as interesting on the flip side when we see things differently and they come from different angles. And you sit there and go, I can see how you got there. I don't, and be okay with disagreeing and finding that compromise to go forward. That's just you and me is my point. If you put that whole discombobulated friendship group that we've got in one room together and tried to do something like this, we would have these issues.
We would have had some issues.
Maybe worse. And I love that humanity about this book, and it's why it's my favorite team right now. I think it's tackling things with characters who are well established in a way that you root for them. You root for their relation. You want them to get through this. I want this to be a team when they're done. I really feel that strongly. And whether they are or they aren't, this is where the creative team on this book has done their job. This book matters to me very heavily. And when you've got so much going on like Metal, you've got everything that's going on in the Batman book right now, and you've got this book, this by no means is the second tier Batman book for me. It so shifts. If you were to ask me, what's your favorite Batman book right now? It shifts from month to month, week to week. And it's probably what I just read. And I love that. I love the quality of what they're producing right now. But I have no hesitation of saying this is my favorite team book in comics right now, with what they're doing with this team. And I hope it continues to be one out of this, because I want to see this team come back together, because I know it's going to splinter from this, and it's going to splinter bad.
It's gonna crumble from this. And the thing is, So who will step up to be the leader? You know, if Batwoman stays on and steps up as a leader and tries to make things right, maybe she can. If Tim steps up and says, no, I'll take over this team, then maybe they can. You know, personally, I'm wondering if the two people who've been the least amount of our conversations, but they're great characters, I'm wondering if Batwing or Azrael step up. You know, and say, hey, for exactly the point you said, how we had the three heavy spotlighted people who all are kind of doing their own independent things and weren't thinking team. We've got these two members who've always been team players. Wonder if one of them steps up, says, hey, you know, we can still fix this. And I think that's what it's going to take, is for a single individual to step up and say, we need to save this team. You know, and start thinking of it as a team. Start thinking, you know, and it's the, you know, what is the team concept? What is it? And I think that's what's going to come through. I think one of those two are going to step up, and I'm leaning towards Batwing because I think he's, you know, whereas Azrael is a really cool character, and I love the guy, and I'm loving what they're doing with him throughout Detective. I think Batwing is going to step up, and I think this is going to become, Detective Comics is going to be a Batwing story for a little while he rebuilds the team, because the ramifications of this are Orphan, Batwoman, Red Robin, and Spoiler are gone. After this thing is done, I can't see them sticking around, but I can see Batwing and Azrael saying, we're going to keep going. We're going to push this through. And maybe as they're going, maybe they can pull Orphan back in. Maybe they can pull, Red Robin back in. And they can slowly start rebuilding the team again. But I think we're looking at a good length of time before we actually see this Detective Comics book being a team book again. Now, granted, if I'm wrong and the team's able to stay together and they're able to work in it, none of this, I'll be happy. Because like you, I want this team to stay. I want this to be a team book. And like you, I agree. This is the top right now, the top book, team book they have going on in DC. And I don't want to see the team break up. But the tragedy and the severity of what they've just had, I find it hard to believe that they can just move on. You know, there's going to be a period. There's going to be a period where the individuals need time away. There's going to be a period where the heroes need time away. There's going to be a recovery time. And that's what I want to see, is what kind of recovery time, what happens in the intermediary. You know, is this going to lead right into, Metal? Or is this, again, there's so many different things they can do, but we're looking at this at the end of this issue is dramatic, tragic, and just a dramatic change in the title. Yeah. And it's matters to me so much. This story, it is a tragedy. It's, you and I both talked about how we've become big fans of Swamp Thing, right? And that's another tragic story. I think monster stories, when they're done right, there's a tragedy to it where you got to care about the person underneath the monster, behind the monster. I never saw myself. I always liked the villain Clayface as a foil for Batman, but it wasn't one of those villains that I go, I'm really invested in Basil Karlo. Like, I like the idea that he was a former actor. It's kind of cool to have a character that can change shape. That was an actor and acts like other people. You never know who Clayface is, that type of thing, where he can pop up. You have these, amazing moments where it's like, oh, that was Clayface? That's cool. But other than that, do you care about the man? Do you care about the character? Not that much for me. In this story, I want him to become a good guy. I really, really want that to happen. And I never saw that happening. And I don't know, what's going to happen with this? Because you see the ending with the blam and the shot in the head. You knew it was coming. I knew there was no way it was going to end but that. This issue just broadcasted too much. But it didn't make it any less pivotal or impactful, because you even see the broken bat at the end. Here's one of the things while I was reading this, I thought maybe would happen. What? Because the one variant cover is blam, with them, and then you see Batwoman setting up, taking the shot. Part of me was wondering if, Cassie was going to jump in front of the bullet and take the bullet for him. And that's who actually gets shot.
Wow.
That's because as I'm reading this, I was thinking, she's either going to take the shot and take out Basil, or Cassie's going to jump in the bullet. Especially because when I'm sitting there and you're reading that final panel, you get that great panel where Basil and her are talking, saying, it's like, you think you're like me, but you're not. You're better. You're so much better. I hurt people, who care about me and trust in me, and so many more who didn't. And he keeps going on. It's like how she is so much. And I was like, it's like bad guys don't get happy endings. And I love the fact that he's, throwing that, and they're just the moments between them, right at the point where, Batwoman over the comms goes, Cassandra, I want you to close your eyes. Batwoman, close them now. And that's what I was thinking she was going to jump. And then you flip the page and blam, and the headshot. And just the tragedy, the look on of that panel is absolutely amazing. This is one of those things where artwork can just do some great stuff with, the headshot and the clay fragments, and just, the look of horror on Cassie's face, as he's dying. And I want to see what happens next. This is the fall of the team. This is the break of it, and this was just one of those things like, wow, this is amazing, because I so wanted the happy ending. I so wanted when she injected him with that formula, he'll be fine. No, he's not. He's not going to make it. And this was just that, wow.
So there's the fall of the Batman. I do want to see the rise. And I hope this does have a rise to it. If not, here's the thing. If not, I love what this book's doing. And this is a great example of what we talked about before with Batman. I really have confidence in the creative team running this book. And that's something that's important as you continue on a journey like this. You've got to have confidence in the team that's telling the stories that they are. I want to see where this book goes from here. And I care.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
I would like to remind everyone about our show website, ragingbullets.com. It's where we first update what's going on with the podcast. That does link to our Twitter. It also links to our links. I'm inventing new words, Jim. It also links to our Facebook fan page. Besides the Facebook fan page, as I've always mentioned, we have a great Facebook group community. Jeremy and the whole crew over there, it's such a wonderful group of people, and I'm proud for us to be associated with it in any way, shape, or form. It's actually my must-hit spot. A lot of times I find out comic news from that site first, but also reactions, because they're honest and heartfelt reactions from fans to brand new issues that are out of comics, what's going on in the world of video games and pop culture and television. And it's not always just DC. People shout out a whole bunch of things that are interesting. Obviously, it's more of a DC focus, but that's not all that's going on there. And it's just a great group of people that are fans like yourself. If you've never been part of a Facebook group community, this is really one to join. I do encourage people, if you're like, I joined a Facebook group community before, but I was getting way too many emails, you can control that in your settings. So don't feel like Facebook groups have to be really intrusive. I know sometimes that's kind of a negative and why people don't like doing them. Don't have that keep you from joining this group, because it's just a wonderful community and it's worth shouting out on this podcast. So I want to thank everyone there for just making it a fun spot to hang out. We're also on Google+. We have a account on PSN. I'm raging_bullets. Jim, your sensei _whatnot. I am on the Nintendo Network. I've got a Nintendo Switch, so if you got some Switch games you want to play with me, just shoot me an email. Our email address is ragingbullets@gmail.com. Feel free to send us emails about the show, or if you want a friend on Nintendo Network, send it over there. We also have a show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434, or drnorge on Skype. We love having you a part of the show. We do air all voicemails, so if you call in, we will get you on the podcast, and love hearing your reactions to what's going on in comics and DC pop culture in general. A lot of good stuff going on right now. Sponsoring us this episode, once again, is DCB Service at InStockTrades.com. DCB Service is the place to support local talent for us, Ted Sikora, as he releases Tap Dance Killer #1. It's 30% off, only $2.79. Also, if you haven't picked up the original book, Apama, Undiscovered Animal, they are re-releasing it now as a monthly. And I'm going to grab this because it's remastered with bonus content, and I'm always a fan of that. When you re-release it, give it an opportunity for fans who read it before to get something new out of it. That's also 30% off, only $2.79. So you can get both of those this month, and please support a friend of the show. And Ted's going to be on next episode to talk more about those books. So please be sure to check into that podcast and support Ted. And Jim, what is going on at InStockTrades.com?
Well, over in the deals of the week, we have the new Teen Titans Judas Contract Deluxe Hardcover Edition, 50% off, only $14.99. And we've got a great trade, the Superman, the Coming of the Supermen, the 42% off, only $9.85.
I want to remind everyone, too, that DCBService.com is a digital partner. So if you use Comixology or My Digital Comics, go to DCBService.com, log into your account, make sure you link those accounts to your DCB Service accounts. In the future, shop through the DCB Service portal. You'll actually see it when you go to their website under digitals, drop down the digital store. It takes you right to Comixology. You earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order by going through that portal. It supports our show sponsor, but also gives you something back. So, and it costs you nothing more to do that. So even if you're just a digital shopper and you're like, I want to support the podcast, I don't, buy paper product, please consider going and using their digital portal. It's a great way to help somebody who helps us and many other comic book podcasts. So I want to thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to be joined by longtime friend of the show, Ted Sikora, as a Cleveland native, as we're going to be discussing Apama, the Undiscovered Animal, and really, more importantly, the launch of Tap Dance Killer #1, the brand new miniseries spinning out of Apama. So I'm excited about that. Tap Dance Killer's fun. So we'll be able to talk about that next week. See you soon.
Bye.
Strategery. What is that supposed to mean? That's a word that I have never seen. Do you exist? Strategery. Suddenly, I don't feel as smart as I used to be. I couldn't find it in a dictionary. Oh, what the heck is strategery? Why I need to know, I don't know, it's just my way. I asked a friend I know, and they told me go away. Strategery. Maybe it's something that is wrong with me. I may need a pill from the pharmacy. Maybe that will cure my strategery. Why I need to know, I don't know. It's just my way. Just because I don't know, I'll just say it anyway. Strategery. A definition isn't meant to be, or at least one that I can see. I'm so confused. Strategery.